Today is the 5th of November. It's not only important because we would turn our clocks back, but remember the 5th of November. Gunpowder, treason, and plot. Ruth, where are you? You should know this one. In England, right about now, the children are getting ready for fireworks. The 5th of November was the day that Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the House of Commons. What an idea. Not that this has anything at all to do with what I want to talk about. I just thought you'd like to know. I want to share with you a quote from Maya Angelou. She says, "The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned." And my talk this morning is called Welcome Home. And it's interesting, as you know, the week or two before I speak, I gather information and things that I want to have give me good ideas. And last Sunday I spoke in Salem, and it was interesting to me to notice that their affirmation for the month was, "My heart is in the place that love calls home." And so I thought, oh, there's one for me. I'll take that one with me. There was a author, a Roman author, whose name I can't remember, so he must be very important, who said, Pliny the Elder. You see, I do all this research and then I can't remember who they are. Pliny the Elder coined a phrase that I think we all use: home is where the heart is. Now that's 25 AD. That's a long time. I'm not sure that that's the only thing he's remembered for, but he must have been important. And then there was Brother Ishmael, who said, "Please come home to yourself." Now, all of these different little things I've picked up over the last couple of weeks. And in thinking about it and wondering about it and chewing on it, I decided that I liked really perhaps the best Maya Angelou's little quotation about the fact that we all want to go home. Now, I don't want to go home to England. I mean, I've done that, but that's not an ache that I have in me. And I really don't ache to go home, but there are those times when I need to be by myself, with me. That's where I have the time to be quiet, to be at peace, to feel all of those things that we want to feel. Maya talks of it as being a safe haven, and the others talked of it as being something from the heart, as being love, but I think we're all talking really about the same thing, the idea that there is this place in us that is special where we are safe just with us. And of course, if you're going to talk about love, you have to, or at least I have to, think of what Jesus said about that how important that was. And he said, there are only 2 commandments. The first one is, thou shalt love the Lord thy God. The second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, for a while there, I thought, why isn't that 3? But neighbor and self are one thing. It's one commandment. And we don't seem to have, at least here in this church, I'm very aware, that we don't have a difficulty, a challenge with number 2, which is, thou shalt love thy neighbor. We have a challenge, I think, with what I call number 3, loving ourselves. In years of teaching classes and giving talks, I have discovered that more people have difficulty loving themselves than they do any other person. And I just wonder why that is. And thinking about it, I realized that all of the challenges I'd ever had really have come from me. I mean, I am, it's not that I'm a troublemaker, but I always seem to, knowing about religious science as I do and what we believe, that the challenges I've had have come out of the way that I have believed, not knowing otherwise, that I have thought about the world, the way the world is, the way the world ought to be, the way other people ought to be, and I used to have strong opinions about that. Now I'm more inclined to let people be exactly what they are so that I can try and take care of myself. But most all of us have grown up with childhood teachings and beliefs that have colored our lives all through to adulthood, and some of them are things that really were never true, never really meant to be said about us, beliefs we've picked up in school, what other children have said about us that have hurt us in some way, and we've attached that to ourselves. And so it's all about us. Now, Dr. Holmes, I went, of course, to Dr. Holmes to find out what he had to say about it. Sorry, the founder of religious science. He says, love is within us. It cannot be destroyed, but it can be ignored. Ignoring love is our only problem, and embracing it is the only answer. Now, I thought a lot about that. It never occurred to me that I might ignore love. And I don't think we would, any of us, do it consciously, but I think we do it with the things that we do. We don't do it deliberately, but we cast shadows. We do things that are not in the same vibration as love. We criticize. We even condemn. We worry about things, therefore casting a shadow before us, before the event or whatever has even happened. We do things like that in our own consciousness and with our own thinking. While they are not destructive in the world, I don't think, they hide our love, or the love that we feel within, with a shadow of things that are not in keeping with this perfect love of God that we hold within. On our weekend away, we stayed with our daughter for a couple of days so that we wouldn't have to drive up and down to Salem twice in one day, and we had a wonderful time. And she's quite a fine artist, and we were having a little conversation about some commissions that she had been asked to create. And she was very happy for that. All artists like to earn money. And she said, sure, and she asked each one what they wanted, and it seemed fine. And then one of them who wanted a painting of a little child. Their child had been watching television, and the light was shining on the child's face, and it was a very pretty picture that she had. And Sandra said, yes, I think I can do that. And then the lady said, and do you think you could put a cross up there? And Sandra said she immediately felt, okay. It created for Sandra a picture that she couldn't see, if you know what I mean. She couldn't see that. When she'd first been asked to paint the picture of the child's illumined face, oh, okay, because she would have put in the painting what was in her heart about that. So she's a little bit troubled about that. And then another one, the gentleman had just had some part of his house remodeled, and this was his bathroom, and she knew him well, and he even took it to her and said, now this is where it's going to be, and this is the wallpaper, and so on and so forth. And I was wondering if you would paint me a countryside picture maybe with a river running through it for this bathroom. I could do that. Fine, wonderful. And then he called her a couple of days later, and he said, do you think you can put a boat in there on the river, some people fishing maybe, something like that? Oh, she's done that before, so she said, okay, fine. Called her again another couple of days later, and he said, could you put a couple in love in the boat? And she got the same feeling again, that, okay. And memory's not serving me at this moment. I can't remember what the third one was, but it was the same thing. The beginning idea was being dissipated by all the extra ideas that were being added, and she wasn't comfortable with any one of the three. So finally, she had to make the decision to call each one of them and say, this really isn't quite my style, what I'm used to doing. However, I can recommend, and she would recommend one of her painter friends who were very good, and breathed a great sigh of relief. And I said to her, that's so interesting, because when I was called and asked if I would do this talk in the Salem Church tomorrow, I said, fine, what's the subject? And he happened to say, love. Okay. Then he emailed me a copy. His church subscribes to headquarters, and they offer topics with talking points. And as I read the talking points, I went, And I worked and worked on that, and it just wouldn't work for me. So I called Reverend Moore, and I said, one of the things, the talking point says, be sure to mention Dr. Holmes and read a quote or something like that. I said, if Dr. Holmes and read a quote, can I do anything I want? He said, oh, sure. And Sandra and I were talking about that. And what we decided was that when we follow what's in our heart, everything comes easy for us. When it doesn't come from in our hearts, it's hard work. And I think that is true of everything. And so that's where I'm going with this idea today, that there is something within us that knows what is good for us. And there is something inside us that makes us feel not so good when it's not for us. And we need to have the courage to honor that feeling in our heart. Back to Brother Ishmael. I got this out of an old Science of Mind magazine. What Brother Ishmael said was, please come home to yourself. And in this magazine I read, coming home to yourself is a journey to the inner depths of your being. It is the act of becoming still and knowing in that stillness that the infinite intelligence, God, is in your very midst. Dr. Ernest Holmes reminds us that the essence of healing is an inner realization of perfection. This is an inside job. We cannot find this outside of ourselves. And in thinking back to my talk with Sandra, I realized that we both gave ourselves a healing from what was troubling us by honoring and respecting what was the truth of our inner being, the way that we feel. So coming home to yourself is a journey to the depths of your being. So what is it that we find there? Now, for the two of us, I pegged it to that word integrity. Now, I wasn't absolutely sure. I needed to look it up because integrity means things like being honest and doing all of those things. But that's not quite the meaning of integrity. Integrity means, I wrote it down, integrity of action or beingness. Okay? An inner sense of wholeness. Doing the right thing for the right reason. And I do believe that the right reason, at least for me, the right reason has to always be right for me. It can't be right for somebody else's reasoning, because I don't know if you've ever noticed that if you decide you don't want to do something, somebody else has a much better reason why you should. So, you know, it's that idea of being so true to ourselves, doing it for the right reason. Now, Dr. David Alexander, who's the minister of one of the churches up north of us here somewhere, has a formula for assisting us to go inside and find that place when we've got one of those challenges going on in our minds. And so I want to share this with you. He has 4 points. The first one is stop. Just stop. Stop long enough to listen. Stop long enough to listen. Number 2, listen long enough to hear. Listen long enough to hear. Hear deeply enough to embody. Hear deeply enough to embody. And number 4, embody deeply enough to act or be. Now, I really like that, and I've tried that, and I found, much to my chagrin, because this is one of my challenges, I always have to fix it. It's like a recipe. I'm never satisfied with the recipe. I've got to up it a little bit with something else, you know. So I have to tell you that there's a number 5 for me. And number 5 in that place is trust deeply enough to know that you are one with the infinite presence that is always waiting with love and answers. Trust deeply enough. One of my favorite words. So there in our own hearts then is where we will find the answer. There is where we will find the shelter that we are looking for. Maya Angelou says there's that haven, that place where you can trust, that place where no one will try to challenge you because they think you should do something else. There is your safeness. And for me, that is because what I know in reality is that I am that God that I am looking for. It is within me. It is where I came from. It is what I am. When Moses took the tablets up the mountain, or took them down from the mountain, both ways, and people asked him, or he asked the voice, "Who shall I say sent me?" And the answer came, "Say, I am." And so then every time we say I am, we are mentioning the name of God. And if we want to be in that integrity, we have to honor and respect ourselves enough to say what is truthful every time we say I am. And any time we say something like I have said to myself from time to time, I am so stupid. I am so clumsy. I am so forgetful. I could go on. And what I ask you to remember is that God is not stupid. God is not clumsy. God is not forgetful. God is pure love. A love that seems to have the desire to express in this world as everything that is good, including us. That divine presence became each one of us, that it might express in this world in unique and individual ways. Not only that, that we as the unique individuals might share back to the infinite the magnificence that we see here, that we might have fun, that we might have laughter, that we might have peace of mind. I'm remembering one of the first classes in our series just recently. The students were asking for things like divine resonance. That really resonated with me, to be on that same vibration. Peace, grace, peace of mind. These were all the things. And my heart at that time was saying, well, you are that God. Why don't you have that? And that's what brought me back to this idea of the way that we can unintentionally ignore the love of God. So we are to be generous with ourselves, be kind to ourselves, stop being rude to ourselves, and many of those other things, simply because while they hurt practically no one out there, they hurt us. You can't be separated from God's love, but you sure can ignore it. And it is such a precious commodity. There is so much for us. We need to honor it. So, there in our own heart is where you will find safe haven, your own heart, in your own heart. You can't go anywhere else outside to look for it. There in your own heart is the safe haven. The inner sense of wholeness and grace. There is where peace of mind is. There is where the joy of livingness is. And there you will find the only place, or the only price of admission, is learning to love that which was created out of and is beloved of God. And that is your own precious self. And I want to close with the last little paragraph of the article that I read to you. When we commit to going within, we actively commit to opening our inner senses, to touch that inner something that proclaims, ah, here is my beloved, in whom I am well pleased. Welcome home. And so it is.